New manager trying to retroactively reject my PTO. So I currently work as a turnaround coordinator at an airline service provider. In September I set a request for PTO for the 14th of December to the 20th. 5 8-hour days plus 2 off days. It got approved about a week later. At the time they were 9 people at my position and a different manager. Fast forward and now they are 3 people. Long story short, new manager came in and made wholesale changes. Fired some people and some people quit, even had multiple people come in and leave during that span. I think you can see where this is going. So December 13th I come into work and my manager approaches me and tells me my PTO has been rejected. I stare at him for like 5 seconds in disbelief and just say that's problematic. He says he can't find anyone to cover my flights. He knew since October and he also has the ability to do the job as well. I tell him that plans have been made and it can't be cancelled. He tells me if I don't show up it could be punishment including suspension and termination. I stare at disbelief again and say, would you be able to find someone to do my flights if that happens? Normally I'm not a confrontational person, but it was obvious he was trying to threaten me. So read it over. I wanted to add some background on what kind of person my manager is. He is a very stubborn man and likes to assert his power in a very domineering way. I mostly stay to myself and only speak to him when necessary and keep my mistakes to a minimum. One time on my off day, one of my coworkers said they overheard him talking with another supervisor. And he said he enjoys firing people. Some of the ramp agent guys also heard it and confronted him and asked what he meant, and he backtracked and said he means he wants to keep people safe. The coworker left the job saying she feared her job security. His intimidation tactic was not gonna work. I already paid for a hotel, a rental car and plane tickets and are all past refund dates. The most annoying part is I'm 100% sure he knows my flight is in the morning, so he knows I won't have time to go to hour to confirm if my PTO is actually cancelled. I told him I can see what I can do and he left it at that. But I have already decided that it was my last day. Doesn't matter if it was approved or not, I'm just gonna give my airport badge to hour when I get back. Maybe this time he finds someone to cover my flights. Fuck that. If it isn't in writing, it did the happen. Sounds like the only thing you have in writing is the approval. 1. Do not turn in your badge. If you force them to fire you, it will make it a lot harder for them to get out of paying your unemployment. 2. Total up what you would lose in deposits etc. if you cancelled your trip at this late date. Immediately send your boss an email and tell him that the company would be liable for this loss. If you do not have an agreement from him in writing to pay that full amount, you will take your PTO. Legally, he can rescind your PTO with no notice in some states, but he would still be liable for any expenses you have if you had to cancel your trip that late. If you have an HR department, I would CC them on that email. My guess is they're going to take one look at it. Call him and tell him that you're taking PTO and he needs to figure out coverage himself. Check your local unemployment rules. You may not be able to collect if you quit. Make them fire you, then file a wrongful termination suit. Also file for unemployment. I'd go off on my holiday and claim amnesia to the conversation on your return. Ask him if any of the conversation was confirmed in writing and tell him you can check your emails later if he'd like. I'd have lots of fun with a few. Nope, doesn't ring any bells. You sure it was me you spoke to? My PTO has already been approved. I will be taking it. Any threats to my employment shall be forwarded to HR and my own counsel. This sounds very much like a you problem and not a me problem. You fired all those people and now can't get coverage. You're a manager. So manage. And no way he will fire you, because that would leave him with only 2 people for what looks to be a 9-people job. 1. If it isn't in writing, it didn't happen. 2. You have an approval of your PTO which you relied upon when you purchased travel and accommodations. 3. I'd be talking to the new manager, telling him he needs to contact legal and HR before he goes a step too far and gets the company a detrimental reliance lawsuit along with wage theft. Because your PTO absolutely is delayed wages. Especially if you stand to forfeit any of it due to not being allowed to use what was already approved. 4. Ace of Trumps. You could also tell him you're willing to work after you come back from your approved vacation. The only question is, will you be working for him or a competitor? What a great opportunity to tell him the old saying, "A lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part." I'm not going to advise you either way, except that if you are turning in that badge, make damn sure that's the first the boss hears of you quitting, because the funniest way. You did great. I would only change a little thing. You are talking about my flights. Since September you should be talking to him about his flights. Time for a union. I am so glad that's illegal in my country. What an asshole. The main issue is that most states don't require or regulate PTO time from private employers. So if he says they need you and it's no longer approved, this is within their right. It's terrible but not illegal on their part. I still think you could probably get unemployment though, as this is basically wrongful termination if they fire you, even if it's not illegal. Unfortunately, very few people in the US have a right to PTO. New boss came in and shook up the house by firing a bunch of people, and is now paying for it. Typical impotent manager energy. Playing sociopath games. So much fun. Don't quit. That's what he wants. Make them fire you. You'll have a strong case for UI and possibly even wrongful termination, depending on your state and the exact circumstances. I was unaware that the PTO procedure had changed and can be cancelled after approval, and failure to follow the new procedure could result in termination. I must have missed the HR correspondence informing us of this. Can I have the new policy in writing, as well as your rejection of my already approved and booked holiday time and the consequences that you and HR must have discussed before issuing me the decision? It's just I'm confused as to why your inability to perform your job as manager is now my responsibility to fix, but I'm sure HR can go over it with me in the meeting I'm about to set up with my independent witness. I'll come back to you with my answer on my acceptance of your renewed PTO policy. I hope you do actually quit. Icon. Take your leave. When you get back, go to his boss and give them the scoop. Sounds like your boss could use some retraining on how to handle people.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.